Ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Historic Board meeting, December 8th, 2025. Tonight we have two public hearings on the docket, along with an informational session regarding 43 Fletcher Street. Before we get started, I just want to talk about recently, the Historic Board in the City of Lowell lost a good friend, Richard Dick Lockhart, who represented the Planning Board on the Historic Board for 20 years and served as chair for 8 years from 2011 to 2019. Dick recently passed away, and he had a great approach with the Historic Board, approaching everything with professionalism, pragmatism, and diplomacy. His leadership, laughter, and sense of Lowell pride will be missed. So before we start this meeting, I'd like to just ask for a moment of silence in the room. Thank you. Okay, so we have two hearings this evening. The first one is 22 Hurd Street. We'd like to invite the applicant to come to the podium. As you approach the podium this evening, we ask that you just state your name. This is just for the recording of the session. It's not for the audio in the room.
Before the applicant starts talking, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote. I have family members who are on the board of directors at UTEC, and given the representation of UTEC here today, I think it's probably best if I just sit this vote out.
Good evening, everyone. Matt Langis, Scott Brown Architects, 48 Market Street, Newburyport, for the record. So we're here back in October 20th. We had a 5-story structure before you, so we've since made some changes since then. It was approximately 50 feet tall previously, but we've reduced the height by a floor, so we're at a 4-story building, 40 feet tall approximately. Same basement configuration and the number of units as the previous design. So because we're able to maintain some of the units, chopping off a floor, I think just made a lot of sense contextually, especially once you go through the other drawings, you'll see that it has a much stronger relationship to the rest of the neighborhood. So the rendering in front of you on A0 represents those updates along with some of the recommendations from the board from our last hearing. We've revised the ground floor to be sort of more of an aluminum storefront configuration, less wood, less sort of like the pseudo-historical representation of materials, which we were sort of pleasantly surprised how much we liked it. You know, we tend to sort of lean heavy into the historic renovation, but I think it sort of gave it sort of its own character. And then we also replaced the more traditional and heavy brackets at the cornice level with much lighter sort of aluminum ribbing instead of a more traditional cornicing. We're still showing 2 levels of brick and then the stucco at the 4th floor. And most of those materials are really just for like that graphic representation of the historic front, at the front and a few feet as you sort of wrap the corner. But part of this too was putting together a rear rendering, because I know we really hadn't discussed that a lot at our last meeting. So A1 shows a better view of the rear. And I think illustrates the relationship between where the existing parking and the proximity to the neighboring building is a little bit better. So we're also proposing some seasonal planters back here. This is to provide some privacy, shield the windows from some of the headlights that might be pulling into those units there. And realistically, it's the only green space that we have back there. So we're trying to have any kind of green or any opportunity to have some green space would be great. But with that being said, this area is still a little bit in development, so if there was something that has gone through that the board has felt has been a successful representation of something similar in the past, we're more than happy to look at other options. But this was a sort of a simple approach to include some green space and also have an opportunity to make those units a bit more private. A2 shows the site plan. So for context, this is a vacant lot located between what was previously St. Paul's United Methodist Church, which was built in 1839. Now it's UTEC. On the right is the Old Elks Lodge, also part of UTEC, constructed in 1923. And on the back left side, which is the Warren Street side, there's not much information on that building. And some of this I touched on in the October 20th informational meeting, but it's currently a law office on Hurd Street, which its construction dates to the late 50s or so. The last time we were here, I didn't have a ton of information on the vacant lot, but since we have reviewed our geotech report and found evidence of abandoned foundations, artificial fill, and some brick in the parking lot in a couple different locations. So that would indicate that a building was there previously and must have had an infilled basement. So that's consistent with the board's comments that they were have been released prior to this hearing. Also on the site plan, one more update that we did was hold the front corner back, hold the building back from the front corner by about a foot. So it just allows for a little bit more of a buffer during construction. When you're right on the lot line, it just makes things significantly more difficult to maintain, such a straight line during construction. You would need sheet piling or something similar. So we're hoping we can get some small skinny excavators in there to get some formwork in and give us a little bit of a buffer to get construction a little bit more realistic. A3 is a surrounding context photos on Hurd Street and Warren Street. So those little icons are showing you where you're at on the street and the views of those icons in the surrounding page. It's mostly brick buildings, a mixture of brick, aluminum, and sort of wood on the ground level, but is a better contextual relationship to what we're proposing. A4 is a sort of an updated pass at the conceptual floor plans. We were able to maintain mostly studios, one bedrooms, and also introduce some two bedrooms. What we've done by moving the mechanical and storage space to the basement level, we've been able to sort of spread out some of that square footage and make some of the units a bit larger. So the smallest unit is about 430 square feet, it's a studio, and the largest unit's about 719 square feet. So from a floor plan perspective, it gives us a lot more flexibility to have this open to a wider range of folks. As I just mentioned, the basement level has mostly laundry, mechanical, and some unit storage for the residents. And then the ground floor, there's lobby, bike storage, mail and trash, and then some additional units on the first floor. A5 is the second and third floor residential units. These floors sort of range anywhere from 430, 646 square feet, but are all sort of roughly in the same configuration. And then A6 and A7 are the architectural elevations. So these are, again, updated from our October 20th hearing. These are just over 40 feet now, which allowed the same 12 feet on the first floor that we had previously presented at our last hearing. And the residential levels would have an 8-foot ceiling. We're not sure yet. We don't really have a manufacturer picked out on windows, but we're still showing a 2/2 grill pattern. Felt that this was still appropriate to the style of architecture that we're proposing. And then on the sides, we're showing, from a material standpoint, a mixture of clapboard and vertical siding at the top with this sort of a horizontal banding that breaks up for these material changes. And then on A8 is a better breakdown of the materials that we're using. So we're proposing to do 6-inch lap siding on the ground level. These are on the sides and the rear now. 4-inch lap on the second and third floor. And then finally on the top floor to have a vertical board and batten. So provide a little bit more of a visual distinction in reducing the apparent massing by having this change in color, change in material, and the horizontal banding that wraps the perimeter. In addition to that, we are showing some dark sky wall-mounted lighting in a few locations. It's really only about 2 or 3 locations in the front. There may be one mounted underneath the canopy in the front as well, but down the sides, they're a bit tight to where the neighboring buildings are. The right side has a 9-foot roughly setback between the two. The left side is 7, so we're proposing some lighting along those signs to make it easier for folks to pick up and get rid of their trash, but also for security purposes on the right side as well. That's more of a pedestrian passageway, so getting some extra light down there we thought was a good idea as well. So those we're proposing those to be WAC lighting. It's a standard manufacturer that we use for a lot of exterior lighting, and haven't selected the actual fixture yet, but would likely be somewhere in the 3,000 temperature range, so a warm light for what we would propose there. A9 and A10 are sun studies. A9 is for spring and the summer, so they're relatively minor changes, honestly, to what is currently there. You know, it's an infill lot, so there's really not a lot that's different, other than, you know, the most of, I think, what you'll see is really the difference in the southern exposure, because there's a building there. But this building pretty much lines up with the neighboring buildings next to it, so there's really not a heavy impact on this building in terms of casting shadows on neighboring buildings. A11 and 12 start to get into the streetscape and street elevations, especially with its context to neighboring buildings. The street section on A11 sort of addressed some of the initial concerns that we had spoke about last time with visibility of mechanical systems on the roof. So from 52 feet across the street on Hurd Street and 70 across the street on Warren, at both of those spots, you won't be able to see any mechanical equipment on the roof. So that's largely in part with having a cornice deep enough to block, but also I think you would have to be pretty far away in order to see what's on the roof here. And then the street elevation, this is, you know, again, one of the bigger reasons to changing to 4 stories instead of 5. Once you see this building in relationship to the other, you know, I think it was a pretty easy decision to sort of slice off one of the floors. I think it had a much better relationship to its context. And then finally, A13, this might be a little preliminary, but we wanted to include some dimensions and more of a blown-up graphic of what we're hoping to do for the front awning that extends over the sidewalk in the front of the building. We're picturing it to be some sort of metal or aluminum to match the storefront that we're proposing at the ground level, and then have some freestanding letters sign on top of that for the address or the name of the apartment if it has a name. So that really concludes the presentation for me tonight. Based on the materials and presentation, we believe that our proposal is compatible, massing scale, and representation of the surrounding neighborhood. So our goal with this was to, you know, restore continuity to a block that we felt was an opportunity for an infill building, and to then also tastefully sort of respect some of the historic inspiration, but allowing this building to still maintain its own character and as a 2025 apartment building. But I'm happy to answer any questions, or the development team and Sharice from my office is also here. Be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns that the board has.
Okay, thank you. We're going to public comments now, or questions from the board? Okay. So we're in the public hearing, so we're going to ask for any individuals to speak in favor of the project. Approach the podium. As you do, just state your name. And keep in mind that if any comments are made, there is a time limit of 5 minutes, just in the best interest to allow everyone time to speak. So if anyone wants to speak in favor of the project, we call them to the podium now. Okay, so public comment in favor is closed. We'll move to anyone in opposition of the project. We ask you to approach the podium, state your name, and
Good evening, Greg Croto, CEO at UTEC. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to be brief to try to make it within the 5 minutes. So as you know, UTEC, we have a campus here that includes 35 Warren Street, formerly 34 Hurd Street, which houses our main building and educational facilities, 15 to 17 Warren Street, home to our licensed childcare facility, event space, and the green space. And I want to thank the board for playing an important role in getting all of these projects off the ground. We really do truly appreciate it. I also want to emphasize that UTEC is strongly supportive of adding more housing in Lowell. We are pursuing our own affordable housing initiative, in fact, because we understand how urgent the need is for our young adults and the city. The concerns we shared tonight are really about ensuring that the new development respects the historic character of this district and follows the same standards that this board has consistently applied, including to UTEC. Our main building at 35 Warren Street was built in 1839. You probably all know this. It's the former St. Paul's Methodist Church, a building of significant historical importance to Lowell's abolitionist history. Among other things, it was notable for hosting one of the only New England fundraisers organized to support the legal expenses of individuals who had been held captive aboard the Amistad. Today at UTEC, our mission continues that legacy by providing young adults ages 18 to 25-year-olds, many of whom are overcoming incarceration, trauma, instability, a place of safety, respect, and transformation. These buildings form the heart of our youth campus. I also want to acknowledge that while we have operational concerns, we recognize that tonight's discussion is really focused on historic appropriateness. We will address operational matters at a later stage, but it's relevant to note that UTEC operates a state-licensed childcare facility at 1517 Warren Street, and we do have concerns about egress around that. With that context, I'd like to turn to the core historic preservation concerns. When UTEC presented our expansion project to this board, our main building, years ago, the guidance we received was clear. Our addition could not exceed 3 stories, and nothing could rise above the historic roofline of our 1839 building. We redesigned our project to comply because we respect the importance of protecting the historic scale and massing of this district. That precedent matters, and consistent application of these standards is essential, including to this project as well. It is also important to note that according to the minutes from this board's October meeting, the previous historic use of 22 Hurd Street was explicitly documented as having been no higher than 3 stories. We believe that's also a critical fact. Looking at the streetscape on Warren and Hurd Street, it's immediately apparent that this block is defined primarily by 2-story buildings, some 3-story buildings. On our side of Hurd Street, every structure is 2 or 3 stories, with only 1 4-story at the very far end of it. This cohesive massing rhythm is exactly what the Historic Board is charged with preserving. The proposed building at 22 Hurd Street is labeled as 4 stories, but in actuality, its perceived height is at least 45 feet when you include mechanical, effectively a 5-story building. It would become the tallest structure in the middle of the block, positioned directly against 2 smaller historic buildings. It introduces a vertical mass that, for us, disrupts the established roof line. The rear elevations of both our 1839 building and the adjacent 3-story brick structure contain architectural features essential to the block's character, including the classical corner, which I've learned all about this, trim on our building, and the original masonry walls and brick returns on our neighbor's building. These features were historically meant to remain visible as part of the district's architectural story. The proposed massing would sit only a few feet from these elevations. You would not see those at all. And this directly conflicts with the board's standards around character, continuity, harmony, and the preservation of traditional proportions. There is also the matter of historical spatial patterns. For nearly 2 centuries, at least that we know, the buildings along Warren Street have maintained an open rear court configuration. These open areas provide access, light, air circulation, and service space, and they continue to do so today, especially for our licensed childcare facility. Filling in this historic open space with a tall, dense structure is not simply a change in use. It removes a long-standing spatial relationship that helps define the character of this block. As the board knows well, preservation is not only about facades, it's also about the spaces between buildings that reveal how the district developed over time. So we present our concerns tonight respectfully and ask for a design that aligns with the historic scale, relationships, and development patterns of this block. The same expectations that were applied to UTEC and that the board's own minutes confirm were historically present on the 22 Hurd Street site. UTEC remains committed to being a constructive neighbor. We deeply appreciate the board's work, not only for UTEC, and we reached out to the developers, and we expect to have ongoing communications as well. So thank you again. We appreciate it.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Lon Povich, and I serve on the board at UTEC, one of the 12 board members of our organization. I just wanted to speak briefly to echo Greg's comments and to endorse his point of view. I'm a practicing lawyer. I've spent half my career in public service and half of it in private practice, where I appear before local boards and commissions on occasion. I know that you have limited powers in your review here, but I urge you to exercise them to maintain the historic configuration of the neighborhood and to assist UTEC in its valuable mission. My last job was in state government, and when I came out of the governor's office, I was looking for a nonprofit in the criminal justice space where I could help the nonprofit do good work. I'd been exposed to nonprofits all over the state, and I decided that UTEC was one that had the greatest impact on young people in trouble and young adults trying to improve their lives. I was lucky enough that the folks at UTEC invited me on the board, and over the last 6 years, I have seen the very valuable work that UTEC does and the incomparable effect it has on helping the young adults in this community. So I urge you to use the extent of your powers to continue to help UTEC exercise its mission and improve the community in Lowell and the surrounding communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Okay, we'll close the comment period, and I will open it up to the board for questions. I know, I will just start, for clarification purposes, going back to the October meeting. The October meeting was an informational hearing, not an informational hearing, presentation on the project just for feedback purposes. It was not a hearing back in October. And I just want to say one of the items we did discuss was the back elevation and how to reconcile that as privacy between the parking lot that's not owned by this proposed project. And, I just want to compliment you on the work that you've put in here with the planters. Any questions from the board?
I wasn't on the board when UTEC came for their application. Is it true that we said that nothing should be higher than 3 floors?
No.
Because I've seen historic buildings that are refurbished that are taller.
No,
than
you're
3
correct.
floors.
The statement regarding that was relevant to the roof line of the gable of the church. There was a desire not to have the addition rise higher attached to the building than the gable or the roof edge of it. And that's the distinction here. This is a proposal for a new freestanding construction. The UTEC proposal was for an addition that the board and the National Park all worked together with UTEC on, so that addition did not come higher than the roof edge where the gable begins.
Which makes
So
sense.
there is a difference.
Sure.
Sorry, if I may, I just wanted to quickly sort of highlight and address some of the concerns about this from a zoning standpoint, and just wanted to sort of clarify for the board as well, but because we're in the MFOM district, the multifamily mid-rise district, that allows certain certain flexibilities from a zoning standpoint. So where we're at from a setback perspective, for instance, the front, side, and rear yard setbacks are all a 0 requirement. So because we're a 0 lot line, we technically do have the ability to go up there, but thought from a design perspective, it's never really a great idea to do that. Plus, it also gives us some more flexibility from a construction standpoint. The height also, 85 is what is shown as the required maximum, but would, in our minds, be completely egregious. And even at, this, I misspoke by saying hearing, but this informational meeting, I think it was a great opportunity for us to see what might come up for concerns, and height being one of the concerns. That was sort of one of our indicating topics of reducing the height and or taking your recommendations was part of revising the proposal that's before you today. So I just wanted to clarify that because this is a multifamily dwelling and a building that is able to apply to this particular mixed-use downtown overlay district, is part of the reason that allows us some flexibility in the zoning requirements. So I just wanted to clarify if anyone had any questions on that. That's on the existing site, or existing and proposed site plan from Landplex.
Thank you. Thank you. Steve, when was, just a question going back to the previous hearing for the addition, when was that, when did that occur?
You're asking a lot.
Yeah.
Greg, when was that? Yeah, it was in the the 2000s, pretty much. It
Okay.
was a while.
I was
And
gonna
and we
say, it
worked with,
precedes me, so I couldn't,
yeah,
couldn't
and
recall.
we had worked with the UTEC team, meaning the National Park architect at the time and others. And it was originally, they had one architect that they were working with, and they brought CBT in as the architect as record, and they meshed it all. And in the end, it, turned out to be, an addition that we looked to as a model, actually, for, in addition to being, the oldest LEED Platinum certified building in the world. So it was a great project to work on, editorial note, so. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question regarding the clearance between buildings. What's the space, the footage? So to the left where the trash,
Sorry, I just wanted to make it back up to the mic. So on the left side of the building is proposed to be 7 feet, and on the right side, it would be 1 foot from the lot line. But 10 feet overall between building to building, if that makes sense.
okay. And then I see that you have a trash area on that first floor. How is that going to work? Meaning, how is the trash going to be removed?
So via the 7-foot wide accessway on the left side of the building. So in the front, there would be gates, and front and rear would have gates that would allow, however, the refuse removal from the city, it would be accessed via that gate. So,
So you intend to use city disposal?
private
Okay.
disposal, sorry. But the intent is to have gates at the front and the back that would give access to this private company to remove the trash via the first floor. There would be like a double door on the first floor that would have access to an internal trash room.
Okay, so no dumpster
No,
outside?
it's all
Okay.
internal to the building, yeah.
Okay. And then, as far as the floor area ratio of the building, are you going to seek relief for that? Does it exceed 4?
No, so it would be 4 times, it'd be about 28,000, so no, we're not to
Okay.
that yet.
Okay. Other than that, I mean, I love the transition between materials. I appreciate that you took off a floor, and I love the capped roof. Am I mistaken, or was the first floor going to be mixed use, and now it's no longer?
No, I think, so initially, we had explored some community space that would be open to the residents, or if anyone were to look into renting that space on the first floor, but part of what, was the driver of cutting the top floor off, obviously had like a rippling effect on the other floors. So some of the units got a bit tighter, and it decreased some of the storage space that we had originally planned, or some of that communal space that we had originally planned for that first floor. The current plan is to still have it available to residents, but more or less an area where mail can go, where bike storage can go, and even some sort of grab-and-go food stuff that would be available to the residents.
Thank
So
you.
initially planned as a community space, but more or less like an opportunity to have some amenities for the unit apartments.
Thank you. And then to the rear, I see there are a couple of parking spots, obviously not enough for all of the residents. Is that intended to be, where they just, drop things off, or?
So that's actually that's the neighboring buildings parking.
Okay,
That's for the Utah
Okay.
parking, right.
okay.
If the chair would allow, just since Ms. Walker had asked about spatial relationships and distances, one thing I just wanted to note is that in the research of the vacant lot, you'll note in the advance notes that it was a building there up until about the mid-1940s. If you're looking at the proposed elevation of the building to the left, there was always that gap going all the way through. To the right along UTEC. To the left, the building that was there abutted directly up against the building that's there to the left. So there was no gap historically between the left building and the one that's been demolished, creating the vacant lot. The gap was only on the right side that shows, and that shows up consistently in the late 19th and early 20th century atlases for that site. Just wanted to clarify that.
I was gonna say, I thought that looked, just at a glance like a party wall that you would never have seen in the past. That wall, and we have this in a lot of places in Lowell, it's just the nature of the way the buildings, some of them don't survive. But in terms of a historic context, that wall, in an ideal historic context, that wall would have been unseen because there would have been something right up
Completely
against
hidden because the building butted up right up against that other building.
I think that can be kind of neat to look at. It's not necessarily like consistent with the historical, but it is kind of cool to see the texture of those walls. But in terms of like a consistent historic, creating a context, that wall would be something that we wouldn't protect because it wasn't part of the original look.
Just a quick comment. I definitely appreciate the design and skill in it back. You had mentioned that a studio, you have it at a minimum of, 430 square feet? Usually I'm familiar with 450. I mean, is that a concern? Just, I've been designing units for a while now, and usually, 450 is like a minimum.
It does get to it. I mean, 400, 430 is a tight number, but some of that is conceptual based on the wall thickness that we're providing. So we're trying to do double stud walls back to back, which takes up a decent chunk of space. So I think at the next level of plan development, we'd have a much better idea of what the exact number is. But at our sort of first pass through this, without getting to that next level, this is what we're anticipating for a
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I'd also like to express my appreciation for the changes that have been made to the design since our informational meeting. Bringing it down to 4 stories and the other changes that have been made successfully brings it in line with the character of the surrounding neighborhood, and I think it fits in well. The Warren Street facade, well, I should step back quickly. Thank you for providing the contextual views of it to give us a better sense of how this fits in visually with the adjacent buildings. This kind of setback with the parking on Warren Street is always going to feel a little bit awkward, but I think the treatment that you've done to this facade makes it read less like just a rear facade with no thought being given to its design. You're breaking it up into different materials, which helps break up the mass. So I think that's been done successfully. And I think that the planters, as a privacy solution, will be successful, assuming that the vegetation can be maintained and kept up over time. Not to get too bogged down in details, but in selecting the material for the planters themselves, and the setback from the parking, obviously those could be prone to being bumped by cars parking there, and could quickly become damaged or discolored. So I would give some thought as to how those could be protected or material use that would help to mitigate that to the extent that's possible. On the color that you're showing for the Warren Street facade, and I guess the side elevations as well, is that set in stone, that color choice, or are you still?
This is the black.
The gray color of the siding on the Warren Street elevation and the side elevations? Okay. I think the gray that you've shown here kind of fits well with the adjacent color of the UTEC edition, so I would encourage you in those final color selections to find something that ties in well to that, so that there's kind of some visual continuity there, since these are both modern elements, and to have some connection there, I think would help this edition.
Okay. Any more questions or comments from the board? Okay. Well, that would conclude the question portion of the agenda. Would anyone like to put forth a motion for a permit?
I'll make a motion to vote to issue the historic permit for construction of a 4-story residential building in line with the conditions outlined in the meeting minutes. That I think have you had a chance to review those? And, okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
One thing I'd like to note is if I could offer a suggestion to also include in the motion that the project's consistent with 3.1 and 3.2 of the board standards.
I'm happy with amending my motion to include those items.
Okay.
Do we need to second that?
Yep, George, you okay with?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we have one abstention. Giovanni? Not even participation, not even participating, okay.
Accused.
Okay. So that concludes the hearing. It is passed. Steve will work with you. And thank you very much. We'll just take 2 minutes for the room to clear, and then we'll move on to the next hearing. Okay, continuing on, the next item we have is DLHDV-26-3, 376 Merrimack Street. It's a violation for signage.
Thank you.
So as noted in the advanced memo, the Boost Mobile at 376 Merrimack Street received a request for compliance regarding the 2 rotating illuminated TV screens in the windows. That was after I had visited the business a minimum of 2 to 3 times, just nicely stating, please remove and so forth. So the request was sent, no response to that. Thus, at the board's November meeting, you voted for the order to appear, a copy of which was also in the packet. No response to that was received, no phone call, no visit. This is the certified mail card noting that the business did receive it. And as of an hour ago, they're still on. So, and obviously you can see no one is here. So that's basically the report. The alleged violations still exist. They are unauthorized work under Section 10 of the board statute, Section 410 regarding signs, and 452 regarding illumination. So that's the report, and you've seen in the documentation what's there, and probably in person as well.
Steve, I appreciate all the work you've done on this. What is the progression from here? We've given the written notice. Where do we
Yes,
go from here?
2 votes would be requested tonight. One would be that the 3 violations exist. And then the second vote would be to set the amount of any fine. You can do up to $100 by statute per day per violation. Professionally, I think that $100 for something like this is probably the extreme. I use the analogy of, you don't need to throw a grenade when a firecracker maybe is more appropriate. So it's up to you what you'd want to set the amount to be. I think 100 would be a little bit too much in this particular case. It's not like it's a building that's suffering from extreme minimum maintenance fatigue or something like that. But what would happen is after that vote, certified in regular mail, same to the business and the property owner, they would receive the notice, and 7 days would occur, and then if after 7 days nothing happens, we would go to the solicitor's office to file in Superior Court, which in the end, we just want them to do the right thing. However, if that's what the process is, and that's what's allowed by statute. So I hope that helps.
That is helpful. Are there any questions from the board on this process?
Just curious, is the business owner based in Lowell?
It's a Boost Mobile outlet, so they appear to be, a franchise or something like that. And again, the communication has been with, whoever's at the counter when I walk in. Hi, how are you doing? Just to let you know, those aren't allowed. And I do remember when they had done the interior fit out was redone about a year or so ago. And they had a temporary outside for the day, still operating business under a pop-up while they were doing the interior work. And it's like, any signage planned? Nope, we're all set. And those appeared. And they already have a giant screen behind the counter as well on the wall. So, these could either be put on the wall or just removed and replaced with a poster, which would be far less egregious than these in my mind. In fact, that's similar to not that the National Guard recruiter on Merrimack down by El Portro had illuminated signage. They had 100% window coverage, and they were able to remove all of that with really no fuss at all, and they replaced it with some window display items. So it's the same thing could happen here.
So it's really the illumination. If they just turned off the illumination and left the signs as is, that would meet our standards.
If they turned them off, the TV screens would basically be turned off, and they could put a poster on each one. Just make them,
Right.
poster frames or
like
something.
a static.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But even even if it was static and illuminated, it's not something that you'd have in there. But they could just use it as a poster,
Right.
promo materials or something.
Okay.
Just for anyone watching at home who may be wondering, how often do we do something like this where we actually issue a fine?
Very rarely. Very rarely. It's usually a collaborative, cooperative process. Hey, we've noticed this. Can you please remove it? And that happens, every other week you'll see something. Or, the open sign's not allowed, but we give them one of our custom ones that we hand out. Things like that. Very rarely. I can't remember the last time we even had a hearing for signage like this. It's so rare because it just never happens.
Yeah, neither can I. I want to make sure anybody watching at home knows that we don't do this lightly, and we don't do it very often at all. You really have to ignore us a lot to get to this point.
And the thing is, you have other Cell stores downtown. I can think of 2 in particular. On Merrimack across from Purple Carrot, in the same building, there's a Cricket and a Toll by Verizon. And I remember when they first opened, went in, oh, sorry, and they put it on the wall. And there's been no issues with them at all. So, but it's noticed. I mean, they do mention to me, hey, what about then up the street? You don't want this to turn into a cell phone turf battle downtown. Anyway.
So we need to set the amount for the fine.
The first vote would be that the violations exist. There'd be 3 of them under Section 10 of the statute, and then the 2 cited there under the standards. So that would be the first vote, that they actually exist, and then move on to whatever fine you think is or isn't appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that the fines exist. You can come up with
The violations.
The violations, sorry, the violations exist.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have a motion that the violations exist. Now we need a motion for the dollar amount of the fine.
And I'm sorry, Steve, can you clarify? So there are 3 violations, and the board has the ability to set the dollar amount at 100 per violation per day. So what we're trying to figure out is what we feel like is reasonable per violation per day.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, I feel, again, professionally, that 100 is sort of like the elephant gun. We don't, whereas, you know.
In my experience, since I've been on this board, I don't recall that we've issued a fine, honestly. So is there like a number that we start at, like historically, that we've used for similar like violations?
I mean, several years ago, minimum maintenance was 100 for a certain building per day per violation. That's just a guide. Again, my recommendation would be that this does not rise to a maximum $100 per day. But then there's also the fact that they've ignored 3 visits and 2 notices. And we had to pay for a legal ad for this as well.
So if it was $25 per violation per day, that's $75 in total, right? That's,
I would think that that would be fair and reasonable, given what this is.
That's along the lines of what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
okay, so, would someone put forth a motion regarding the dollar amount of the fines?
I'd like to make a motion to set the fine at $25 per day per violation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Steve, is there anything else we need on that action?
No, that's it. I'll draft a standard letter that will go out to them, and we'll copy you, and it'll go to the city solicitor, and then, we'll also, I know Giovanni had sent us all an email a few weeks ago about looping economic development in, which we have in the past, just only when it gets to the level of being like this, but we'll get them a copy as well, too.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes the public hearing portion of our program. We'll move on to other business. And the first item on other business is an informational presentation on 43 Fletcher Street.
I have handouts, but is it okay if I put these up?
Please do, yes, yes.
Conversational purposes?
We'll share. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Hi,
Okay, so just if you could start by just stating your name and where you're from, and then,
my name is Barry Gannick, Gannick Architects in Carlisle, Mass. Architect for this project, for this informational session. And you can see the address is 43 Fletcher Street. New ground-up construction. There is a former Fury's Bar is on the site that I was in it about 15 years ago, and I was scared at that time to walk into that building. I can't imagine getting near it now, and the idea is to just take that down and build this new structure, which is mixed-use, ground floor commercial, and 20 units above on 5 floors. It's a 3,600, slightly more square foot site, postage stamp, and 4 units per floor, averaging just over 700 square feet per unit. 5 two-bedroom units, 16 one-bedroom units. And, I wrote out this very nice presentation here just to make sure I would cover all the points. So if you don't mind, I think I will read it. I've worked on many projects in Lowell over the years, gosh, 20 years or more. And Perkins Street Lofts, our firm renovated that project, that building. Jean d'Arc Apartments in the former Rectory building. On the site, projects on Dutton Street, Merrimack, Market Streets, many. And virtually all of these, we had interaction with the board for them in a very positive manner and made these projects better. Always with the board, and Mr. Stoll has been here forever and knows the history of all these projects, and it's been a great working relationship that we've had. And this project here on Fletcher Street is our newest project, and it is bringing together, residential living, vibrant commercial space at the ground floor that I think this area of Fletcher Street, will benefit greatly from. I honestly believe it's going to add energy and vitality and life to the streetscape. And at the same time, the fact that it is a new building, it's going to celebrate Lowell's unique character of the new and the old. Parking obviously will be off-site because of the size of the site. By the way, we have planning board approval for the footprint of this building, which includes overhangs of 3 feet, a typical residential detail on many residential multifamily structures in Lowell historically. And the whole purpose is to create activity on the street, commercial entities to bring people there and to support, and the people in this structure, as well as existing neighboring multifamily structures, will support those businesses as well. And, it's still part of the redevelopment of the Dutton Street interchange, and it's right across from the new district courthouse, which is anything but historic in appearance. And, so this building is sitting right on the edge of existing buildings. McKittrick's is right across the street. Wood-framed residential mixed-use building across Worthen Street on the same side of, can I go here? Do I need to be near the mic? Is that?
The mic is for the TV, so if you go to the boards,
Take it.
bring the mic with you, please. Thank you.
Let's put this up here. And you can see McKittrick's here. This is a same program. Multifamily apartments above ground floor commercial space. And the city-owned parking lot adjacent to it. Okay? But, here you can see the relationship of this proposed building across from the courthouse, existing courthouse right there. And in this view here, you can see the courthouse to the right and this proposed building, right here in the same view. So our intent, have ground floor commercial and activity and added street life. And it also adds security to the street, where this is beginning to be an unbuilt, unoccupied area of the city. Again, a win-win, opportunity here. The units above are laid out to maximize our natural light, our ventilation, livability. You know, we have 3 sides visible. And we're providing housing. We all know housing, as was said in the previous presentation, how important that is to Lowell and the state in general. So what's important here, architecturally, the building, we feel, celebrates both history and innovation and contemporary conditions. It is within a historic district, and it is new construction, but it has the freedom to express a modern identity while also reflecting through materials and forms the history of structures in the area. And notably, we talked about the courthouse being, you know, modern, and McKittrick's right across the street. And McKittrick's, I bring that up because it is such a mix of materials. There is the granite, which is this gray, and there's brick, you know, and the gray really takes off from that part, you know, in these renderings here. You can see here in context, sorry. Here in context, the gray and the gray on McKittrick's here, and you can see it's on the front of the building as well. The materials of this building, we're showing brick at the base as a substantial material and protective material. And the building is then broken up into a traditional tripartite format where you have a base, a middle band, and a top band, a crown. And the brick, which is a darker color, also goes up the corners of the building, as you can see right here, which represents the edge of the building at the street line, differentiates from the bays that stick out. In the bays, we're projecting as fiber cement panels laid out in a masonry coursing to reflect a masonry building, but it's done in a new material with modern detailing and also some metal, minor metal details, such as a coping across the top, metal storefront systems, a lot of glass at the base in the commercial area to bring light in, but also to enliven that common space, the public space. And then the top is also fiber cement, but in a different tone and different detailing and more different sized windows, a little smaller, and a sharp edge to really cap the building against the sky. And there's a parapet that will hide mechanical equipment behind that. And we don't anticipate a lot of visual connection of the mechanical equipment from the street at this point. The materials, the palette, we're keeping simple, and we believe restrained, and working more emphasize proportion, the rhythm, the texture, as in the masonry coursing. And we prefer that over dramatic ornamentation. In closing, the project isn't really just about materials and proportion. It is truly about placemaking. And as I said, this is an empty, well, there's an empty building, but it's an empty lot adjacent to the city-owned parking lot that leaks out onto Dutton Street, literally leaks out. And I think we can begin to re-extend the presence and the building line and safety for people along Fletcher Street with this building. I think it is a plus for the city, and you know, it brings together high-quality residential living, active commercial space, and modern architectural identity that honors the past by looking to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open it up for comments and questions on this. I just want to start off, I really appreciate these drawings and how they show the relationship to the rest of the neighborhood. The courthouse, right, that's kind of a growing area and it kind of going a little, we just saw the previous hearing, right, normally 4 stories in the height, right? But in that area, I think you can afford to go a little higher in that. So it's kind of nice to show that relationship in that spatial piece of it. So I appreciate that. The one thing for me, this is an informational session, right? So you're here to kind of get feedback and everything is, when I look at this picture here in the lower right-hand corner, and, just looking at the different pictures of the neighborhood, a lot of the buildings have almost like a patchwork feel to them in terms of how they're done with the materials and the colors, and they're more on the darker side. And you're proposing all that gray, and for me, I like the gray relating to McKittrick across the street, but if it was more muted in other parts, right, I feel it may fit better with that whole block, right? So you have almost like 2 relationships going on here. It has to relate to what's going on almost like across the square where the courthouse is, right, in size and mass. But then in that corridor, if I'm coming down Fletcher, right, you just want to have like that nice patchwork metric, right. And so my thing is the gray is just a big gray mass. Is just, I don't know if that could just be reconsidered and maybe scale back some of the gray, right? I'm not opposed to all the gray, but for me, I think if it was kind of gray with a little more like a darker gray or a little red in there or something, may make a more relationship to the neighborhood. That's just some of my feedback. Yeah.
And the idea is that, this is a darker gray, it could be a darker, even darker than this. And again, as it takes you all the way up, and the bays projecting out beyond that. These are aesthetic opinions, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Welcome them. That's why I'm here tonight. You're suggesting that maybe adding some brick colors.
Well, I was thinking of some of those bays, were not so gray, right? I'm just picturing, seeing like a big gray square coming over, right? It's going to have such a presence when you enter the city, right? And I just think, the courthouse is a big building and it has a presence, and, it's like a big gray presence right now, right? And it doesn't quite relate to the neighborhood. It's a beautiful building, don't get me wrong, and kudos to the architects and everyone who designed that, but it has no relatability to its neighborhood, doesn't respect the neighborhood, and I feel this has the opportunity to do both, right? And so that's just my feedback is, maybe if you had one bay gray and the other's a different or darker, more muted, right? It's just my thought, and I will stop there and let the board take over, but those are just some of my takeaways. Other than that, I think it relates nice to the space, and I feel like you've accomplished that piece of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely echo those comments. I mean, I want to say congratulations. I think it's a pretty handsome design. I could appreciate definitely the thought and the scale of materials and things that have gone into it. But I definitely see how maybe you could have like maybe 3 different palettes of gray, where we were talking about maybe one is darker and one is lighter, and I believe this brick that you have, it's sort of like a reddish brick, or is it still like a grayish brick?
Here?
Yeah,
It's meant to be gray, dark gray.
a dark gray.
So there'd be a strong contrast between these.
Yeah, so yeah, I think maybe just an exercise in playing with the different
Yeah.
shades of
I can-
gray palettes.
And this is a first generation render.
Yeah.
We would get to higher detail, and but I truly wanted your input at this
Yeah.
point before we went to that extent.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think it could be a very good project, and as you said, yeah, bring some life to that area and sort of place making. you know.
Okay, I think it's so important. I really do.
Yeah, thank you.
Need to get rid of the boarded up building there.
Yeah, and looking at the surrounding neighborhood, yeah, actually, you can pull up that other drawing or the other images. There is, like in the Kittrick building, there is a facade where you have some large square openings on the facade, and then along the main road, a lot of the buildings have kind of punched openings into the masonry walls that are more traditionally kind of rectangular, vertically orientated. And looking at your drawing here, it seems a little bit awkward to me in that you have a number of large square openings coupled with some vertical ones and some very small ones. And there's a lot of variation in the size, and it seems to me that if you could maybe look at an opening pattern that's more consistent across each facade, as opposed to having 3 or 4 different sizes on each facade. The large square openings seem to be more out of character than the vertical ones. I'm wondering if you took the treatment that you have on the topmost floor, where you have the paired vertical windows instead of the large squared one, and continue that down the entire facade, that might make it more compatible with the character of the other facades in that neighborhood.
You're saying that, like in here, if these were more consistent across, is that what you were referring to?
I'm looking at this rendering right now and seeing how we have these large square openings, then we have some full height,
Right.
very narrow ones, then we have some these smaller ones here on this facade that go all the way up, and then you have the paired here. It just seems to be, there's a lot going on these facades. It'd be nice to have more of a regular pattern of sized openings. And I realize that it probably reflects some of your treatment of the floor
A lot
plan,
of
but
it reflects what happens inside.
Right.
And, it is a tight footprint, and there's 4 units per floor in each quadrant. And, there's a large window at, either the bedroom, or a living area, and there's a small window over in the kitchen and the bathrooms, typical. So the size relates to function. It's not, a choice we decided to make, some big, some small. And we will work on that. Absolutely. I understand the point. 100%.
okay.
Okay.
And also just looking at this rendering, I like the idea of treating the top floor in a slightly different manner to kind of create that tripartite approach. And again, this is a kind of very low level of detail, but I feel like the suggestion of using the coins at the corners really doesn't work at that height. It seems a little bit too small of a detail.
Okay.
Whereas the overall mass of the building kind of reads at a larger scale. And that's something that you might see more at the ground floor level, but not at a height where people aren't really going to see it, and it kind of relates to a detail that you would see on a smaller building. So I would maybe look at a different way of treating those corners.
Okay.
Is my suggestion on those.
That's fair.
And then I guess I had a question about the west facade. And you talked about this building having 3 main elevations. But this west elevation is going to be very visible from Dutton Street and from the Canal Walk. And I think that this facade will need more development. And I guess I'm not sure what the plans are for that adjacent lot. I don't know if there's a way to, I understand that you wouldn't want to put windows in there if a future development is going to butt right up against it.
Back elevation?
Right, the facade facing the canal.
Yeah. We weren't going to put windows in there. We're going to run the fiber cement panels around there. Again, masonry coursing.
Right, yeah, I see that in your elevation.
Right, right. and had not been planning for windows. And a couple of reasons, because it is right up against the existing functioning building. And there's fire issue. It's very expensive to protect those windows at that point, to do that. And in a meeting with the building inspector, he asked that we not put windows there. So, and again, that's not a final.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if windows are not going to be an option, I would look at ways to maybe break up with some sort of kind of false panels that suggest,
Absolutely. We can do that.
just to break up that large mass of
Yes.
a wall. I mean, it's hard to predict how long that other site could be developed very soon, or it could be there for 20 years. And given the visibility of it, I feel like that facade will need some further refinement to break it up a little bit. That's all, and keep it at kind of in the same scale as the other facades, the way that the windows are treated.
We can do that.
And including that elevation in some of your renderings too, for the next level of view would also be helpful for us to understand, get a sense of the visibility and how it relates to its context.
Right.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I mean, it also adds a little architectural interest to that wall, even though it's a blank wall, right? Kind of going back to Aurora's point earlier about that wall that wasn't intentionally to be a wall, but sometimes it's just beautiful to look at, right? You kind of have an opportunity here to give that some, a unique signature of some kind of false imprint there as well, without putting windows in. It's a thought.
I have a question. So for your first floor retail, like what is the ceiling height for that level?
That is 11 feet.
And so what kind of retail
The developer.
do you think you're looking at?
The developer actually owns a chain of restaurants, and he may put a restaurant in the ground floor, possibly the entire ground floor, if not just one side. We've already included a grease trap shaft in the design all the way up to the roof to accommodate that.
Great, thank you. And I assume, I don't know why I'm assuming, I don't know if you've said this, are these unsubsidized, like market rate housing? Yeah. And so what is I'm guessing the developer knows their market, but what is the plan for parking? Do you think you're not going to have people that have cars, or do you have a location elsewhere that they would park, or are we just really leaning into the MBTA zone and not providing parking and hoping people figure it out?
That's a start, but also to negotiate with the city for spaces in city parking garages.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts from the board?
Well, just one thing I'd note from a technical perspective, the overhangs of the city sidewalks for the bump outs or the bays, that will need a vote of city council and a license agreement, all of that, like we would for a projecting sign or anything that extends over the city public way. So when the time comes and it's appropriate, that would have to happen separate from this.
Right, and like I said, we already have a vote of approval from the planning board on it.
Yeah, but this would be for the city council.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yes,
Very good.
they send their recommendation essentially to the council
Okay.
to support that.
very good. Okay,
Well, I thank you for the presentation. I think if you have any follow-up questions, please, reach out to Steve, right?
I always do.
Yeah, he's a great resource. We're lucky to have him.
I tell you, this gentleman has been tremendous in helping us through projects in the past and to get them right. And I guess my first one really was the Perkins Street lofts and everything that happened there. And it's a long time ago already at this point.
Well, now it's Riverhawk Village.
That's right. That's right. That's when it was market rate parking.
Well, that was with
not-
Bob Delholme and Ed Walsh Jr. And
Exactly.
we did those two buildings and then the new construction to the left of it, the two rows
Exactly.
of that. Yeah.
Did that as well, yeah. And I always felt that fit right in, but that was with a lot of input with the board at that time.
Right.
So, I thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on, Steve, enforcement actions and violations aside from what we've already talked about, anything additional? wanna
Speaks for itself. The administrator's report does as well. I did want to note one thing. I don't know if people have been up Worthen Street lately, but the project at Girls Inc., really intense maintenance repair effort on the two other buildings that they have there. Previously, the board had approved the work at the former Greek American Legion, but this is the next phase that involves the prior buildings they already had, including an elevator. And I was able to do I got them some research on Greek Revival colors, it's noted here, and that's why you'll see the duplex in the middle is a residential scheme with the yellow, with the white trim and the black doors and windows, and then the former church attached to it is a more of a richer, warmer gray. And we're getting lots of great feedback out there from the people in the neighborhood, the contractor, the client. So it's really going to bump up the street appearance along there. There was a fear it was going to look like a monotone kind of gray blob of three buildings on that side, but we were able to kind of get it more in the period appropriate range. If you haven't seen it, take a
I
look.
walked by it tonight on my way in, and I was really struck by the improvement from the last time I'd been by there.
Yeah.
A couple months ago. It's
The big
really-
thing was
really beautiful now.
we made sure the giant arborvitae came down in front of the former
that
church
helped,
because,
yeah.
well, that was half the problem. It was trapping moisture, causing deterioration and so forth. So once that went away, first of all, you see the building now, and it's going to, be much better for the building to breathe and have light and air and so forth. So they've stopped now for the season, and they'll wrap up next spring when the season allows to finish the painting and trim work and such. So I did want to point that out there. And then that's about it. We're 80 followers away from 10,000 on Facebook.
Oh,
So
boy. That is a momentous
anyone has
occasion.
any questions, that's what we have.
Okay. Any board member items or inquiries? Okay. Well, in closing, I want to wish everyone a happy holidays, a happy new year, and we will reconvene in January, provided this material to meet about. Do we know what the date is if we are to meet in January? Because I know we have a holiday in there, so would we
Yeah, no, January is the
off
12th.
schedule? Okay.
Yeah, January is, let me see here. It's January 12th, the second Monday.
Okay.
Oh.
No, that's great. No impact with the holiday. Okay.
Do we need a motion to?
We got a motion to adjourn.
Great, I make the motion.
Okay, all in favor say aye. If you're opposed, you can hang out. Happy holidays to all.